Heart to Heart Catholic Media Ministry presents Lessons from the School of Suffering. A young priest with cancer teaches us how to live. Written by Father Jim Willig with Tammy Bundy. In the 20th anniversary edition of this book, there was an edition of A Word from Our Publisher from Father Michael Sparough, the president of Heart to Heart. We begin this week's release of our recording with that section, followed by an introduction by Tammy Bundy and a foreword by Father Michael.
Father Jim dedicates this book to Jesus, who is my way, my life, and my truth. John chapter 14, verse 6. To our Heavenly Mother Mary, who is a source of great intercession and consolation. To my loving family, who helps me carry this cross of cancer every day, every step along the way. To my spiritual family, the parishioners of Saints Peter and Paul Parish in Cincinnati, who faithfully love me and pray for me. And finally, to all who are sick and suffering, as well as those who care for them. A word from the publisher. 20 years ago, in the summer of 1999, Father Jim Willig, a diocesan priest from Cincinnati, was diagnosed with stage 4 renal cell cancer. 1 year later, with the help of Tammy Bundy, a parishioner and professional writer, he reflected on what he was learning. Cancer was his tutor in the school in which, without his consent, he had been enrolled. It would claim his life just 1 year later, at the age of 51. But the lessons he learned have brought comfort and wisdom to tens of thousands who have also found themselves enrolled in this school of suffering. When Father Jim Willig asked me to write the foreword to this book, I would never have predicted the impact his writing would make. It surprised me that this book has been of help not only to those struggling with cancer and other serious diseases, but it has also been a source of comfort to their families. It has helped to carry hope and strength to those who have lost loved ones, and has brought light to those who struggle with depression and a sense of abandonment. Deep suffering puts us all face to face with the big questions in life. Why is this happening to me? How do I get through it? Is there hope on the other side? With remarkable candor, Father Jim writes about his own struggles. His vulnerability, honesty, and emotional truth make this book a valuable spiritual journal for all who are facing the challenges of sickness and loss. Father Jim brings the mystery of the cross of Christ into a clarity that can only be named by those who have walked this journey with Jesus. Heart to Heart Catholic Media Ministry, the ministry Father Jim founded, is delighted to be able to bring this 20th anniversary edition of his book to you. Savor its truth, and then put it into the hands of loved ones who, in the midst of their pain, seek a wise and comforting voice. Father Jim's words can be a healing balm for every heart willing to journey with him through these pages. J. Michael Sparough, S.J., President, Heart to Heart Catholic Media Ministry, Feast of All Saints, November 1st, 2019.
Forward. Recently I was dining with an architect friend and his wife. Styling himself as a somewhat cynical realist, my friend challenged me by remarking that by the time midlife comes around, people don't change. We just stay locked into the personalities, patterns, convictions, biases, likes and dislikes that have come to define who we are. I told him that I believed this to be true for many, but not for all. He pressed me to name some individuals who had changed in midlife. Immediately, I responded by naming Mother Teresa and Cardinal Joseph Bernadette. My architect friend pushed these public examples aside and said, "Yeah, sure, they're the exceptions. But do you personally know anyone who has really changed and become a different person in the middle of their life?" Without missing a beat, I responded, "Yes, Father Jim Willig. I know for a fact that Father Jim is not the same person he was a year ago. His struggle with cancer is reshaping his personality and making him into a saint. Today is the Feast of All Saints, and I stand in the conviction that God has called all of us to become just that, saints. And who are the saints? Except those who have allowed God to form them and love them into holiness. Usually this forming and loving is a direct result of suffering. This is the process I see taking place in the heart, mind, and soul, the person of Father Jim Willig. It is the process we hope is at work in all of us. But in the school of suffering, some of us are placed into a classroom for accelerated learning. Long ago, St. Irenaeus wrote, "The glory of God is a person fully alive. It is a mystery of the deepest order that his renal cell cancer has eaten away at Father Jim's body. He is becoming, in the eyes of those who know and love him, a person fully alive." There's a freedom, a joy, a wisdom, dare I say, a holiness in Jim that has always been there in the embryonic state. This holiness is only now emerging with a power that was not present previously. I've been a Jesuit for 32 years and a spiritual director for many different people during that time. I count it one of the greatest gifts of my life to serve as spiritual director for my friend, Father Jim, as he walks this path on which God leads him. Throughout Jim's journey with cancer, I have witnessed the most extraordinary changes in the heart and soul and person of a man I thought I knew. Do people change in life? Some do. Many don't. It's clear that people don't change automatically. Suffering is no guarantee of holiness. Some people walk through their education and learn little, while others seem hungry to learn. So it is with suffering. For some people it can be an invaluable teacher. For others, it can crush a person into self-pity. I have witnessed Father Jim's openness to learn from his life experience. I've always admired Jim's eagerness and desire to learn. I know few Catholic priests who have put more time and effort into learning to be a more effective preacher of God's Word than Father Jim. He has always been hungry to learn about Scripture. It is with this same zeal that Father Jim has sought to learn from the cup of suffering that Jesus has asked him to drink. This book is a record of one man's account of his yes to deeper intimacy with God. This volume testifies to what that yes has cost Father Jim. More importantly, he records how richly blessed he has become. Father Jim provides us with a textbook. God's grace will determine when and with whom we will study. But this much is certain. Suffering in life is inevitable. None of us is getting out of here alive. What we do with this suffering, and whether it teaches us anything, is a choice we all must make. Many, many people have questioned God's wisdom in allowing this young priest to suffer with cancer. Jim Willig, well loved in Cincinnati, is a gifted homilist, an excellent scripture teacher, a pastor with charisma and charm matched by few. With the priest shortage such as it is, how could God fail to see how much Father Jim is needed to continue his work in this parish and around the country? I don't presume to know the mind of God. But Father Jim's reflections begin to help us shift our gaze from the cost of the cross to the gift of God's grace. Jim is not afraid to let his soul be seen, to name his fears and frustrations, and still cling to his deep belief that the Lord will lead him safely through this storm. Each of these life lessons has cost Father Jim a healthy chunk of tuition. I don't believe any one of us will fully appreciate what Jim has learned until such time when the Lord enrolls us, or someone we love, in this same school of suffering. For those already enrolled in the school of suffering, this book will provide an assurance that we are not alone, that suffering does indeed have meaning and purpose. For the rest of us, Lessons from the School of Suffering provides an opportunity for a bit of advanced study, so that when that registration form arrives on our doorstep, we will, like Father Jim Willig, be open and ready to change for the better. J. Michael Sparough, S.J., Feast of All Saints, November 1st, 2000.
Introduction. Some things you just know. It was that voice we all have inside us to guide us, even though we don't always listen. But this time I was actually listening, and so it was that I scheduled an appointment to meet with the priest of my new parish. 3 months earlier, shortly after I had started attending Saints Peter and Paul Catholic Church, the pastor, Father Jim Willig, announced that he had renal cell cancer. My intense reaction to this news left me confused. I barely knew this man. Why would this diagnosis touch me so deeply? I felt the Lord was telling me something here, but I didn't know what it was. I then wrote about Father Jim's unfolding story in my column for the Cincinnati Post, but somehow I knew that wasn't all there was to it. Some things you just know. When Father Jim returned from his surgery after his kidney was removed, I felt that same something telling me to go to him and offer my assistance. And so I set up that appointment. I think the Lord wants me to help you, I boldly informed this recovering priest who hardly knew me. Kindly, Father Jim thanked me and graciously suggested that I might be able to help him with writing for an inspiration line he was starting. The inspiration line turned out to be a telephone hotline where people could phone in daily to receive an inspirational message. We did indeed work together on this, and it was a success. But still I knew that was not all that I was being called to do. Some things you just know. Then one day I had a meeting with Father Jim to discuss that inspiration line. It had been a rough day for him due to receiving the news that his cancer was spreading. Upon leaving our meeting, I felt that forceful something stop me in my tracks and make me say to Father Jim, I think the Lord wants me to help you write a book about your cancer journey. Father Jim humbly replied, No, I don't think anyone would want to read anything I have to say right now. He was physically and emotionally drained, but he politely added, I will pray about it though. After I left, as I sat in my car, I too prayed, Lord, if this is simply my thought, let it go now, and I won't bring it up again. But if it is your thought, please put it in Father Jim's heart too. The very next day, Father Jim pulled me aside after Mass and said words to me I will never forget. You won't believe this, he excitedly began. Reverend Howard Storm, who is a close friend of mine, called me this morning and said, Jim, I don't know what you want to make of this, but last night I had a dream. In this dream, the Lord told me to tell you to write a book, and he told me to tell you not to worry about not being a writer. He's going to send you one. Of course, I believed it. Some things you just know. Tammy Bundy.
Heart to Heart welcomes you back next week for another inspiring chapter from Lessons from the School of Suffering. If you are interested in purchasing a copy of the full recording of this audiobook, either on CDs or through digital download, or a print copy of the book, or other resources available through Heart to Heart Catholic Media Ministry, please visit our website, www.htoh.us. There, you can sign up to receive more inspiring content delivered to your inbox. Or call us toll-free at 1-877-208-4875 with any prayer requests you have or other help you may need. And please, as always, keep us in your prayers as well. Donations of any size are also greatly appreciated to help support this ministry. This audio recording is copyrighted 2023 by Heart to Heart Catholic Media Ministry. Thank you for listening, and may God bless your heart and the hearts of all of your loved ones.